Hey everyone, Ron Callis here with One Firefly. How you guys doing? Thanks for joining us today. What is it? It's 12:30 p.m. on Wednesday, May 3rd. Happy to be here with all of you guys. And this is now our third industry chat with Ron, live Q&A with different members of the industry. And today we're going to have a lot of fun. I've got longtime associate and friend of mine, and just so happens to be our director of product here at One Firefly. I've got our very own John Baskerville. So let me show you guys John. How's it going, John?
Hello, how's it going, Ron? How's it going, Facebook audience? I am doing well.
John, is this officially your first Facebook Live, or have you ventured out in the past?
You know, I've been paying attention to Facebook Live, but this is going to be my very first appearance doing a Facebook Live. So,
awesome. Well, you're doing great so far. Just so you know, you're A+.
All right, let's keep it that way.
Let's keep it that way. Well, awesome. Well, John, I got some questions prepared here. A lot of our audience, our customers, our industry peers may not know that much about you and your role here at One Firefly. And so my goal is over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to ask you some questions and have some fun and learn a little bit more about John Baskerville and what you do for One Firefly and kind of ask your opinion on different topics. You game for that?
Awesome. That sounds like a good plan. Let's do it.
All right. Well, first of all, let's start. What got you into the marketing space and into web design, that whole genre? How did that happen?
You know, it happened a long time ago. I'll start there. You know, I've always had a creative bug. I knew I had to learn more about this space at some point. You know, and early in college, I was doing a lot of, you know, I went to college to learn computer systems. In my second year in college, I was doing a lot of lawn work, waiting tables, you know, nothing unusual for that, you know, that chapter in your life. But, you know, that was definitely not satisfying. It was good, hard lessons learned. But, you know, I had this creative bug, and I knew that if I can combine that with the technical skill set, that the world of possibilities were then infinite to go online and actually create. And so I did that. I accelerated my studies into that side of development, design, and then eventually opened my own business and started developing websites and offering all other sorts of online marketing and services. So I felt like I could actually create and now help people. And that's more satisfying to me. And so that's where I put all my time and energy. I've been doing it for the past 20 years.
Now, you mentioned you owned, like many of us, there was a life before One Firefly. So you,
Right.
in your former life, you owned a marketing agency and you ran that. And so a lot of our customers here at One Firefly are small business owners of different shapes and sizes. What was the experience for you like, just running your own business? I mean, what were some of the ups and maybe the downs of that side of things?
Well, you know, the ups, I'll keep the up pretty brief. I mean, the up was, you know, obviously going out there and creating something of your own. You know, you have these wild, ambitious ideas of what you can do, and you go out there and you make it happen. And so, you know, I did that. And so that was satisfying. And I had a successful business. There was nothing wrong with it. You know, but there were challenges. There were definitely challenges. And I would say there were the two challenges that come to mind for me. The biggest one is finding a regular audience, right? You know, it's hard when you don't have an established or regular audience to build a client base. And that was just always a challenge for me, trying to find a regular audience to communicate my services to, you know, rather than just being spread out all these disparate places and trying to educate people about what you do. So that was the biggest challenge, finding a regular audience. The other challenge was that because of that, you're constantly bidding for work. You're constantly bidding for work. You're constantly driving your prices down to actually win that work. And that's just an impossible scenario. You can't structure, you can't do any financial modeling around your business and structuring your products and services. Your margins are always being cut into. You can't plan to grow that way. You can plan to stay alive and survive, but your margins are always variable. Sometimes they're almost non-existent by the end of a bidding process, and so that was just an impossible way to survive. And it was just month to month at that point, and I was doing well, but it was just a stressful thing to not be able to expect what's coming in the door next month because you cannot effectively plan. And the grind for bidding. It was just
you
terrible.
And I ended up meeting. You and I knew each other when we were kids, and we met much later on via social media, right?
Yeah, we ran into each other's social media. You just contacted me out of the blue, and whoa, Ron Callis, and it was. We connected at that point and got to exchange and so talking about One Firefly, and I think it was Firefly Design Group at that point, right? And
that's right.
Firefly Design Group at that point, and you were talking to me about the things that you were doing, and it was very exciting. I mean, right off the back, I don't know how long that initial conversation lasted, but we got into some pretty deep conversation, right off the back, and what you were doing at that time was pretty interesting. I thought fascinating. You had an established client, you had an audience, right? That was the most interesting thing to me at that time, is that you had an audience. And so there was lots of ideas being thrown around in that first conversation. And, it's really fascinating. I think you would agree to look, fast forward now and just to see where we have come, what has crystallized as a result of those initial conversations.
Now, most of our audience, and I welcome, we are live on Facebook here. I'm watching the feed. We've got some people checking us out. A lot of our customers and maybe just folks that know you and know One Firefly may not know that you have such a tenured career in the wrestling world.
Wrestling.
That's wrestling. That's how my dad would say it. He'd say wrestling.
Yeah, a lot of people say it that way.
Wrestling.
Indeed.
So, I did a little bit of wrestling when I was younger, and now I'm afraid to get near a mat. I might get broken in half. But you've had quite the tenured career. Do you mind just sharing with our audience a little bit about your love for that sport?
Yeah, so sure. That is part of how me and Ron got to know each other. Ron also has a singlet somewhere in his closet and some wrestling shoes and some headgear. He was a pretty tough cookie. And but that's where it's always been a passion for me, wrestling. I've been wrestling in high school, did pretty well in high school, went to college, did pretty well in college. And then all of my friends that were also doing well eventually went out to the Colorado Springs, where the Olympic Training Center is for the U.S. men's wrestling team. I made it there eventually. They had egged me on year after year to get to come out here and train with them, and I eventually did. And so that's where I am based currently, here in Colorado Springs. The altitude is very high. It's an ideal place for a lot of the U.S. teams to train. And that's where I'm currently doing my training. So I'm still active in the sport. I'm still planning to compete in next year's round of sanctioned and international events, and trying to get myself ready for that. And so I've done a fairly decent job trying to compete with the young guys at this old age. Keeping myself in shape, and I'm going to accelerate the intensity of that in the coming years, so that I can actually
John, are there rules like around how old you're allowed to be and still compete in the sport? Are there any restrictions where they're looking out, triple?
Yeah.
What is it, AARP restrictions or anything like that?
There's an AARP tournament. For old folks like me, it's a funny question. I mean, I would say there's an unspoken rule, certainly, that at some point you're supposed to put on the polyester shorts and grab a whistle and become a coach, and not compete anymore. And I've resisted that.
A lot of our mutual friends over the years have gone on to be wrestling coaches.
Yeah. A lot of our friends have gone on to do that. It's a very fulfilling. It's to take what you've learned and give that to others is a noble path, and so that's not certainly not to downplay, diminish those paths, but I'm still in the competing spirit right now, and a lot of our friends are coaching and teaching and bringing up young men and teaching them great things, and There's always going to be a component for that for me as well. Always giving back and doing clinics and that sort of thing, and helping out a good friend of mine here that's a veteran of the training center. He also does some of that in his spare time. But I'm also competing. Now there'll come a point where that's done. But right now it's not going. It's still going to happen.
I josh with you about the topic, but we're all proud of you that you're out there doing that.
I appreciate that.
All right. So here at One Firefly, you are our director of product. Can you help our audience understand what that means? What is, and maybe expound upon that further. What does a normal week look like for you, if there is such a thing?
I think I would preface it by saying, what it really is, it's really trying to understand what best products and services. There's a lot of things that we can create and develop out there, right, in the world of online space. But really, what are the best products and services that we can develop? What can we innovate that is going to help our clients, that's going to benefit our clients, right? So not getting distracted by all the fun things that you can do. What are the things that are actually going to have an impact on this industry, the people in this space that are out there working hard and trying to grow their businesses? So a lot of that question in and of itself, lends itself to a lot of research, a lot of understanding what things can work, what things can be developed. And then from that, we then get into a development cycle, right? And so that's, a lot of planning is involved in that. And we eventually then beta test and release new products and services on some regular frequency. But then what comes after that is, making sure that we're nurturing those products. So we launch a product, making sure that the launch of those products are successful, making sure that the client experiences are well, and then figuring out what we can do to further enhance those products or better improve the experience for our clients, so that we're not simply producing products and then saying on to the next thing. So that is part of my role, is to look at the things that we're currently doing, not just the things that, what new things can we do, but look at the things that we're currently doing and constantly scrutinizing them. There's always areas to improve. So that is also part of that. And then beyond that, the day-to-day, the day-to-day for me, we have a fantastic team that I manage of web designers, graphic designers, content managers, social media marketers, client relationship managers, traffic managers, and making sure that the day-to-day for our internal staff and for our clients, is happening as seamlessly as possible, that we're delivering products efficiently, that we're staying on schedule and in task, that there's SOPs developed, there's any number of products that we produce, that we then introduce to our staff and say, here's how to do those things, here's how to deliver those services. And making sure that they know the steps, all the steps involved, the sequence of those steps, involves quite a bit of SOP development. And so there's quite a bit involved on the day-to-day. And so there's no shortage of work. We're all busy. We're all working hard. But we have a fantastic team. And I think that's what makes my day-to-day easy, makes my job stepping in, logging on every morning and knowing that I got a fantastic team behind me is one of the treasures and treats of working with One Firefly. But, in a nutshell, that's what I do on a day-to-day.
You just came back from vacation, right? So you were just away in California for a little bit?
That's right, San Diego.
And
yep.
And you made a comment to me. I figured the audience might appreciate that. You made a comment that it was actually okay to come back. You weren't completely buried or swamped. And is there a reason for that, or is that did that surprise you that was your experience just in the past couple of weeks?
I think when we've been doing this for a while, Ron, and we have grown quite a bit. I think we're about a 20-man team, but we didn't start that way. We started with 3 people. That eventually grew to 5 people, 6 people, 7 people. But a lot of people wearing a lot of hats at that time, and it's always hard to decide when's the appropriate time to take a vacation when you have such a small team that's responsible for so much. And this vacation that I just took, I would say, is the first time that I came back from a vacation and things were pretty seamless. I stepped into my Monday and just picked up where I left off. And that is a testament to how well we have structured the business. We've thought really long and hard about how to structure our business, how to structure our team. And we have just, again, a fantastic team. We in operations, in our traffic management, in our client relationship management department. We have leadership within the content department and web team. That's all making sure that things that are supposed to be happening are happening. And so when I came back from vacation and saw that, you know what, we're sitting good, and I'm going to step back into my Monday without having to put out fires and without a stack of things that I need to catch up on, and that felt really, really good. So that's a testament to our team, and I thank everyone if any of our team is listening in, and that is fantastic. It's always been a struggle for us to structure properly, and I think that's probably the case for any business, particularly if you're starting out, to get to the point where you're actually structured properly. And I think we are better structured today than we've ever been. And so that's really fantastic for us.
But by the way, John, Kendall is giving you a shout out on Facebook. She says, thanks, John, for all that you do.
Thank you, Kendall. Big shout out back to Kendall. Kendall's our lead web designer for our web department. And she is certainly part of the reason I came back to Relative Peace. And so that's Kendall's been working really hard for us. So thank you, Kendall. Big shout out back to you.
So, John, in the last year, we, One Firefly, have launched quite a few new products. We launched, off the top of my head, you could correct me, we launched the Smart Layouts. I'm going to work in reverse order.
Yeah.
So we launched Smart Layouts. We launched Web Maintenance. We launched Lead Concierge. We launched UI University.
Yep.
And there might be a few more in there. But what is the process that you go through and or the team goes through, just to give our audience a bit of a perspective, when we are architecting a new product? I mean, what does that process look like? Just if you could, give maybe a little bit of a behind the scenes. Just as an example, yesterday I was on the phone. Taylor and I were with another marketing company having a discussion, and they were giving us accolades for the I think in their case UI University. They were saying that was just really such a novel product, and I think it is unique. So, and you're the man in charge of that. So how do we do what we do? How do you do what you do?
There's a number of steps involved. Again, I'll reiterate, it's first trying to figure out what is the product, right? What is the thing that's going to best benefit the client? What service could we create to best benefit the client? And a lot of that just has to do with looking out and figuring out where there's a void, where there is a service that could be provided that's not being provided. But once we figure out what that is, there's research, right? Before we actually even get into development, there's research about, how do we then, how do we service, how do we develop that particular product? What platforms might we need to assist us in the delivery and or development of that product? What are the costs associated with acquiring some of those platforms that help us in the development and servicing of those products? And then figuring out from a financial standpoint, what's the viability of us then servicing that particular product or service, right? And then once we've done that, and we've decided that, yes, this is a viable product, we can actually do this, we have the manpower, bandwidth, resources to actually produce and then service this product, we then get into actual development. And development starts with a concept, scoping out what the concept is. In some cases, we get into wireframing if it's something that's aesthetic. We get into laying out the actual process, the steps that are involved in delivering the actual product, right? So what is the process? What happens on day 1? What happens on day 100? And all the steps in between, so that we have a full understanding as to what's involved in actually executing or servicing that particular product. And then we run that through a beta phase where we're QCing it internally. We're testing that product out internally amongst our team. We're looking for problems. We're looking for errors. We're looking to try to break things, a hackathon, if you will, trying to break things and making sure that product is stable before we actually release that into the wild. So in a nutshell, it goes through that sort of life cycle. And then again, once it's released, we then make sure that we're constantly paying attention, initially, especially in that initial launch phase, that things are happening the way they're supposed to be happening. But there's a lot of internal research, financial modeling, and then process development that happens with our products before they actually make their way to life.
Perfect. Thank you, John, for that peek behind the scenes. Now, to change topics, you just recently attended Social Media Marketing World out in San Diego. Mm-hmm. I wanted to join you. My schedule conflicted, so I wasn't able to do that. But you went out there, represented One Firefly. What were some of your major takeaways just from that experience? And I believe it's the largest marketing or social media marketing related trade show in the world. Is that correct?
It is the largest trade show, largest conference, and not just in North America, in the world, period. So the who of who is there, the who's who is there. And to that point, they don't just, I would say they do a very good job of making sure that the presenters, the people that are going to put this content in front of the audience there, they're doing presentations, they're doing workshops, they're putting a whole bunch of content in front of you. They did a really good job of vetting that content. So you just can't come there, for example, and do a live podcast. Maybe you've been doing a podcast about, Facebook Live or something else. You can't just come there and do a live podcast on stage. They want to make sure that the presenters came there with unique tactics and strategies that we could then go home and then implement with our own companies and agencies. And so I preface it by saying that. And the takeaway that I came away with was that you have to pay attention to the first 100 days of the client experience. There's really two takeaways. It's one, starting with the first 100 days of the client experience, making sure that after you've made the sale, that you're spending a lot of time post-sale paying attention to what happens, one, in the onboarding of that client, making sure that they come on with as much joy and exhilaration and honeymoon spirit that they had during the sales process, that carries through the onboarding process, that they're just as happy through that experience as they were when they were excited about the actual product. So that onboarding, that you have to pay a lot of attention to that onboarding. And then post-onboarding, onboarding is not going to take 100 days in most cases. That could take 10 days, that could take 30 days, that could take 60 days. But once you've onboarded them, there's still another remaining balance of 100 days and beyond, actually, that you really have to focus on and make sure that you're constantly reaching out to the client to make sure that their experience is maintaining itself, that they're still having a great experience with their product or their service. In many ways, they call that marketing after the sale, so continuing to demonstrate and prove your value to those existing clients. And that really then got into the second point that they talked about quite a bit, and that was making sure that you're continuing to nurture your existing relationships with your clients. There's always a component of finding new audiences, right? And that's important if you're trying to grow your book of business. You have more clients that you can cross-sell products and services to, but spend a lot of time paying attention to your existing client base. That's people that have, these are people that are either have spent money with you in the past. These are partnerships that you've had in the industry. These are people that already have relationships with you and or trust you. And making sure that you're reaching out to those people on a regular basis is one of the best things that you can do for your business. Don't get distracted by chasing the new audience. Spend a lot of time focusing on your existing audience.
John, the world of digital marketing is a pretty, ever evolving landscape. Mm-hmm. There's I don't know that a month goes by that some new platform or technology or strategy isn't talked about on some forum or some podcast. What are some of the emerging technologies or platforms that you think our core customer, the technology integrator, should be taking advantage of that maybe they are not right now or they're not aware of?
Sure. This is, this was also talked about at that conference, and they said video. That's the short answer is video. Video performs far better than any other content type out there. And so, what are ways that, if you think about video, right? You hear about Facebook Live, you hear about live video. It's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter's now getting in on the action here recently. But I would tell you there's two types of ways that you can use video. Obviously, you can do Facebook Live. Maybe you should be walking around and showing off your showroom, right? You put a lot of time and investment in putting that showroom together. And it's not just for people that, Google you and do a map quest to see if they can find you, if it's still using MapQuest, knocking on your door and finding your location so they could come and look at your showroom. That showroom is open and available to anyone if you can put that content online, right? You can do a walkthrough of your showroom. The other question might be, well, I've done a walkthrough of my showroom. How many times do you want me to do a walkthrough of my showroom? Well, maybe you got a new flat screen TV, a 70-inch, the razor thin pixel display, a screen TV. I just was watching one yesterday of an LG screen, very thin. All of the pixels, the display is just the pixel display.
They call the new wallpaper displays.
The wallpaper, yeah, that's right. And all the hardware and firmware is in the actual sound bar beneath, right? And so it's thinner than their actual LG phone, right? So maybe you got that and you just set it up. You did a showroom walkthrough, but maybe you got something new that you hooked up in your showroom. Why don't you show that off? Do a Facebook Live, tell everybody about this new piece of hardware that you got in, and you can regularly do that, right? So that's an idea of how to use Facebook Live, and you can then market that content once you've created that after the fact. Another way that you can use video, it's not just with Facebook Live, say that's not where you're quite prepared to go. We often talk about photographing your projects, and there's obviously challenges in doing that, making sure that you have the appropriate licensing and having the conversations with your clients to make sure that you can then film that content or photograph that content. But video too, why not video, post-build, mid-build, or pre-build, mid-build, post-build. That's fabulous content. You see stuff like that on HGTV all the time. If you can video that content, maybe that's a 10-minute case study. Maybe you break that down into a 1 minute or 30-second video ad that you can then push out there and cut those into ad pieces. Video is content that far outperforms any other content that you could be developing. And learning how to leverage video, repurpose video, make that into advertising material is definitely where a lot of the market is going. And so you're going to see a lot of that continue to happen. There's other platforms out there like Animato, something like that. Maybe we'll drop that in the transcript afterward, that allow you to create short little video clips. But that's where that's where the current trend is, and it's there for a reason. It's not going anywhere. So pay attention to that. There's lots of ways you can leverage video content.
Yeah, I would use this Q&A session as an example. I mean, the fact that there's the technology that all of us mere mortals can easily have our hands on to allow us to stream in multiple video streams. I'm here in my office in Cooper City, Florida. You're in Colorado Springs. We're streaming this into Facebook Live. We'll further organically gain reach via organic and paid. I mean, in essence, we have our own show, and that technology is ubiquitous at this point. So Facebook Live and the world of live streaming is one take on video, but and as you said, John, there's many different formats and uses of video. But I agree, and as our customers and our friends and folks checking out this live session. Look at your industry peers' websites, and what you're probably going to notice is they're devoid of much video content. Frankly, they probably haven't been touched in recent history, the websites altogether. So, A, if you update those sites, and B, put some video on there, whether it's you or your manufacturer videos, or you purchase video content, or you stream video content. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. So I agree with you tremendously, John. Now, that said, when as a small business owner, if someone is looking to market their business and say leverage the world of digital marketing or even content marketing, I would challenge it'd be pretty easy for someone to feel overwhelmed as they start to dip their toe into that to figure it out. And thus, there's probably a lot of common mistakes. You and John, you've been working with these folks for 20 years. What do you think are, at least today, some of the common mistakes people are making?
A few come to mind. Top of mind, actually. I would say black hat SEO is still out there haunting people, tapping people on the shoulder, right? It's this idea that, you could trick the Google algorithm or other search algorithms, marketing algorithms, to get an advantage on your competitors. There was a day where that was actually possible. You could actually do that. But those days are long gone. Google has moved into the realm of artificial intelligence, driverless cars. They're now trying to become a manufacturer in many ways. Smart home coming into your Google Assistant coming into your home, and Google Earth. I mean, all the things that Google has become very, very smart. And the days of tricking them is just over. I mean, you can't trick the system. You can't cheat the system. And that's really what it is. People looking for shortcut ways to get a leap on their competitors. And the bottom line is, if you need to follow good standard practices, white hat SEO techniques, search engine marketing techniques, and be diligent about that, be regular about that, be strategic about that. And if you do that, or if you're working with an agency that is doing that for you, that knows the ins and outs, then you can avoid those black hat SEO techniques. And the thing about the black hat SEO techniques is because not only is Google smarter, and it's not, you're not going to be able to fool them, they're now going to penalize you, right? You're going to get penalized as a result of trying to deploy those tactics.
John,
and that's
Rachel just jumped on Facebook Live and she asked a question. She said, can you give examples when you say white hat SEO? What do you mean by that?
So yeah, I'll answer it first by saying what is black hat, and then I'll say what is white hat by comparison.
That'd be great.
Right. So black hat, I'll give you a very common old school example, right? Called keyword stuffing, right? People would think, okay, I have a footer of my website. I'm just going to stuff a lot of key phrases into the footer of my website. And the footer of my website is orange. So I'm going to make all the text orange. So when the user comes to the website, they don't see all of the keywords that are in orange in the footer of the website that are stuffed down there. It could be hundreds, if not thousands of them down there. So to the user, they don't see it. But in their mind, what they were doing was trying to trick Google, who's going to crawl that website and say, oh, wow, look at all of these key phrases that are on topic for this particular search term. We should reward them, right? And that was a pretty foolish assumption for Google to make at that point in its in its inception. But that's when Google was a child. Google has grown up. It says you can't fool us like that anymore. That's pretty ridiculous. Now that's a common thing. Now there's other tricks that are a bit more sophisticated, but the bottom line is you can't trick Google anymore. You just can't do it. That's an example of black hat. Now what is white hat? White hat is in essence anything that you're doing in an honest and ethical way, right? That you're not trying to cheat the system. So if there's keywords that you want to get discovered for, don't stuff them into the bottom of your footer and make them invisible. Why don't you create content that's relevant to that particular topic and make sure that the content that you developed has the key phrases and the related key phrases within that content. That's woven into that content in a natural way, in a relevant way, and in a way that's not abusing or trying to abuse or trick an algorithm. So the bottom line, white hat is just honest content creation, right? It's honest techniques. It's doing things in a way that's not intended to trick the system, but develop rich content that's actually going to serve your audience. And that's the difference. So I would caution people to stay away from black hat SEO techniques. They are harmful. They will hurt your business in ways that you perhaps don't understand. But avoid them. There's ways to succeed without going the black hat approach. And we have proven that over the 8+ years that we've been servicing this space.
Well, John, that was an awesome answer, sir. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time today.
I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, Facebook audience, and let's do it again.
Awesome, and gang, thank you for checking out our page here, watching our video, and hopefully learning. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this. We're going to continue to do this every week. If you have recommendations on people in the AV, automation, or security space that you'd like to see us have on the show, have me interview, and you'd like to learn more about it, please drop it into the notes or visit us at onefirefly.com and send us a message there. You'll notice there's a live pop-up. We call that service Lead Concierge. Feel free to interact with whoever that is and give them your feedback as well. So thanks again for hanging out with us today, and we will see you next week. Be well.